Hello. Sometimes, when we look up at the night sky, it seems almost unbelievable that the fragile blue world beneath our feet could have survived so much chaos. In its 4.5 billion years, Earth has endured collisions with other planets, fiery asteroids, global freezes, and mass extinctions that nearly wiped out life. And yet we're still here, breathing, listening, and living. Our fragile home has endured storms greater than we can imagine, and in its existence lies the silent story we're about to follow. It's easy to imagine Earth not as a mere lump of rock, but as a child of the cosmos, incubated, tested, and reshaped over the ages. As you close your eyes and follow this story, think of our planet as a candle that flickers in a storm, but never goes out. Instead, it grew brighter with each gust of wind. Billions of years ago, the universe was violent and unpredictable. Asteroids rained down like fiery arrows, carving scars across the face of the young Earth. Entire oceans froze over, turning the planet into a glittering white sphere floating in space. For a time, strange, alien-looking creatures dominated the surface and seas. Some survived, many disappeared, leaving only fossils silent, whispers of their existence. Sometimes, it felt like a miracle that life persisted. But this is not just a story of disaster. It is also a lullaby of the resilience of life. The Earth always finds a way to recover, to grow new forests after fire, to bloom new life after silence. Every end is also a beginning. And if we want to understand how we arrived at this moment, a world of forests, cities, oceans, and songs, we have to go back in time. Back to a time when Earth was not Earth. Back to a time before the oceans, before the sky, and even before the Sunday. Let your mind wander to the beginning, to a universe still dark, filled with drifting clouds of gas and dust. From that mist, light was waiting to be born. The great story of Earth did not begin on Earth. It began in the stars. So tonight, as you listen, imagine yourself drifting gently through time. Imagine billions of years, slowly turning the pages of a cosmic book. Each chapter tells how this fragile planet overcame the impossible, how it was shaped into a home, and how it continues to gently support us, even now. If you love science stories told in a gentle tone like a lullaby, please subscribe to the channel to embark on fascinating journeys of discovery. Here, you will learn the wonders of the universe, relax your mind, and find peace before sleep. Let every night, instead of worrying, you have a companion, telling you the secrets of science gently, so you can sleep easily. And our story begins from the dawn of the solar system. To find the first whispers of Earth's story, we must go back even further, beyond the oceans, beyond the continents, back before the moon had even risen in the sky. The clock resets to about 4.5 billion years ago, when our solar system itself was nothing more than a drifting cloud of interstellar gas and dust. Picture it, a vast and silent cradle floating in the blackness of space. This cloud stretched for light years, made of the ashes of stars that had burned long ago. Their lives had ended in brilliant explosions, scattering elements, carbon, oxygen, iron like seeds across the cosmos. It was from this ancestral dust, this ancient stardust, that our sun and planets would be born. Slowly, gravity began to stir. At first, it was like a gentle tug, a quiet invitation. Dust grains drifted closer, gas thickened, and over time the whole cloud began to collapse inward. As it did, it spun faster, swirling like a cosmic whirlpool. In the center, matter gathered and pressed together, hotter and denser with every passing moment. The pressure grew unbearable, until suddenly hydrogen atoms fused into helium, and in that instant, light burst forth. Our sun had been born. Imagine it, the first sunrise, not over Earth, but in the very heart of nothingness. A new star blazed into existence, flooding the darkness with golden fire. Around it, the swirling disk of dust and rock continued to circle, glowing faintly in the newborn starlight. Within this disk, tiny clumps of matter began to stick together. Grain by grain, pebble by pebble, they grew. These were the seedlings of worlds. Farther out in the cold edges of the disk, the clumps were made mostly of ice, gases, and liquids, the beginnings of the outer giants, like Jupiter and Neptune. But closer to the warmth of the sun, where heat stripped away the lighter elements, heavier rocky material gathered instead. From this furnace, the inner planets were born: Mercury, Venus, Mars, and of course, the one we now call Earth. Our planet began as nothing more than a glowing ball of molten rock, spinning silently in the vast nursery of world. It was fragile, fiery, and uncertain, yet destined to become the stage for oceans, forests, and dreams. As you imagine this scene, let it unfold slowly. Dust swirling like soft smoke, the sun blazing at the center like a hearth fire, and tiny newborn planets circling it like children at play. This was the beginning of Earth's long journey, a journey written not only in stone and water, but in the stars themselves. With the sun burning steadily at the heart of the solar system, the disk of dust and gas around it became a stage for creation. Within that swirling cloud, pieces of rock began to collide, stick, and grow. At first, they were small, mere grains and pebbles drifting through the cosmic wind. But gravity, patient and unyielding, kept pulling them together. Over millions of years, clumps became boulders, boulders became mountains, and mountains merged into spheres. Earth was one of these spheres, a child of collisions. Imagine it, a ball of molten rock, glowing faintly in the new sun's light, spinning gently through a sky of fire and dust. Every moment was violent, yet also tender, the rough sculpting of a world that had not yet found its calm. The inner solar system was crowded then, filled with newborn planets struggling to survive. Each one was carved from the same cosmic clay, yet each found a different destiny. Mercury became a scorched stone, baked by the sun's furnace. Venus wrapped itself in a suffocating blanket of carbon dioxide. Mars, smaller and colder, would one day lose most of its atmosphere and dry into desert silence. And Earth, our Earth, balanced in just the right place, close enough to feel the sun's warmth, but not so close as to be consumed by it. The early Earth was restless. Beneath its surface, magma churned like a fiery ocean, bursting upward through cracks and scars. Volcanoes tore open the young crust, spewing gas into the sky. The air was thick with carbon dioxide, methane, and hydrogen sulfide. It was an atmosphere unfit for breathing, a poisonous haze cloaking the new planet. And yet, it was exactly this volatile breath that laid the foundation for life's far-off future. In those days, the solar system itself still shimmered with debris. Comets streaked by like frozen lanterns. Asteroids collided like cosmic drumbeats. Each impact reshaped Earth's face, carving basins, raising mountains, scattering molten rock into the sky. To us now, it might seem like chaos, but it was the kind of chaos that builds. Slowly, out of fire and stone, Earth was taking shape. When you close your eyes, you can picture it, a glowing sphere in the darkness, surrounded by countless sparks of rock and ice, each one colliding, each one leaving its mark. The young Earth was battered, scarred, and unfinished. But in that endless dance of destruction, a pattern was forming. The planet was finding its roundness, its gravity, its strength, and though it did not yet know it, Earth was preparing to become something rare, something fragile, something alive. As Earth's molten surface began to cool and solidify, the young planet exhaled. From countless volcanoes, plumes of gas poured into the sky, weaving together to form the first thin veil of atmosphere. But this was not the soft blue sky we know today. It was a heavy, toxic shroud. Hydrogen sulfide, methane, carbon dioxide, all of them filled the air, rising like smoke from an eternal fire. The sun's light filtered through this thick blanket in dim, reddish hues, casting the land in strange colors. To stand there would have been impossible. The air would burn your lungs. The ground would scorch your feet, and the silence would be broken only by the roar of eruptions. And yet, there is a kind of beauty in imagining it. Picture geysers of molten rock, rivers of lava glowing in the darkness, clouds of gas curling in the air like drifting incense. The Earth was not lifeless, it was alive in a different way. Its heartbeat was volcanic, its breath a fiery exhalation of gases that would one day make the sky habitable. Every eruption released ingredients that would mix and transform across time. Carbon dioxide, though suffocating, would eventually help regulate the climate. Methane and ammonia would take part in early chemical reactions, opening pathways for organic molecules. Even water vapor steam rising endlessly into the air was collecting, waiting for the planet to cool enough to fall back down as rain. This was Earth's first breath, not gentle, but fierce. It was a reminder that creation is often raw, noisy, and difficult. Still, in its own way, it was the necessary prelude to the quiet oceans, the drifting clouds, and the tender blue skies that were yet to come. When you imagine this scene, imagine Earth as a newborn wrapped in smoke and fire, exhaling for the very first time. The breath was harsh, but it was life-giving in ways no one could yet see. Beneath that poisonous haze, the seeds of habitability were being sown, and slowly, moment by moment, Earth was preparing itself for water, for oceans, for the first spark of life. Even as Earth was settling into its first rhythms, the heavens above were far from calm. The newborn solar system was still crowded with drifting debris, asteroids, comets, and rocky fragments left over from creation. They circled the sun in restless orbits, colliding with one another, changing course, and falling toward the planets like sparks from a grinding stone. For Earth, this meant a bombardment beyond imagination. Day after day, year after year, colossal rocks slammed into the surface. Some were small, no more than glowing meteors that flared into nothing. Others were massive, mountains of stone that struck with the force of thousands of nuclear blasts. Each impact carved deep craters, split mountains, and scattered molten fragments into the skies. To us now, it might seem like destruction, but to Earth, it was something more, a kind of shaping, as if the planet were being sculpted by a hammer of stone and fire. With every strike, minerals were stirred, gases were released, and new landscapes were born. From chaos, form was slowly emerging. Imagine standing far away, watching this ballet of impacts unfold. The sky would glow with streaks of fire, the ground would rumble like a great drum, and the air would shimmer with heat. It was violent, yes, but strangely rhythmic, like a cosmic heartbeat. The universe was not careless. It was creating, refining, preparing. Asteroids also brought gifts. Locked inside some of those rocky travelers were traces of water, carbon, and organic molecules, the building blocks of life. Each fiery collision delivered not just destruction, but ingredients. Piece by piece, Earth was gathering what it would one day need to nurture life. So when we think of that rain of fire, we should not picture only devastation. We should picture a cosmic rainstorm, pouring down seeds along with flame. It was Earth's trial by fire, and yet it was also Earth's blessing. For without those ancient collisions, the oceans, forests, and even we ourselves might never have come to be. Among the countless impacts Earth endured, there was one so immense, so transformative, that it forever changed the destiny of our world. Scientists call it the giant impact hypothesis. The story goes like this. A wandering planet, about the size of Mars, drifted too close to Earth. Its name was Theia. Picture it, two young worlds drawn together by gravity's pull, moving silently at first, then colliding with unimaginable force. When Theia struck, the Earth shuddered. Mountains vaporized, oceans of rock boiled, and a storm of molten fragments was launched into space. For a moment, it must have been as though the planet itself was torn apart. But from this violence, something beautiful was born. The shattered pieces of Earth and Theia didn't simply scatter and vanish. Instead, they began to circle Earth, glowing like a halo of fire around the wounded planet. Gravity pulled these fragments together, fusing them into a single companion. Slowly, a sphere formed, and in time, it became the Moon. The Moon is more than just a satellite, it is Earth's eternal twin, born from the same collision, bound to us ever since. For billions of years, it has watched over oceans, forests, and civilizations, casting silver light into our nights. Its pull has steadied Earth's spin, giving us stable seasons and tides that dance in rhythm with its orbit. Without the Moon, life as we know it may never have found its gentle balance. When you look up at the night sky and see that glowing disk, remember, it is not just a distant rock. It is a piece of Earth itself, torn away in fire and reborn as a companion. The Moon is a reminder that even in the fiercest collisions, beauty can emerge. So, from fire and loss, Earth gained a partner, one that would forever guide the rhythm of its seas and mark the passage of its nights. Theia was destroyed, but its memory still hangs above us, glowing softly, whispering of the time when Earth was young. After the birth of the Moon, Earth remained a restless and fiery world. The ground was still molten in many places. Seas of lava flowed across its surface, and volcanoes roared without pause. Yet in the air above, something was changing. Volcanic eruptions had filled the skies with gases, carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur, and vast amounts of water vapor. But Earth was still too hot to let this vapor condense into oceans. Instead, it lingered in the atmosphere like a heavy blanket of steam, wrapping the planet in clouds that never broke. Imagine a world where the sky is always dark and hazy, where the air glows with the reflection of lava below, and rain is forever promised, but never falls. This was Earth in its steam-shrouded youth. Not yet blue, not yet green, just red fire and grey mist. The planet was breathing, exhaling vapor with every eruption, but it was not yet ready to hold water on its surface. Every droplet that tried to form was stolen back into the air by the relentless heat. And yet, hidden within that endless vapor was the promise of something miraculous. Water is the gentle architect of life, the soft sculptor that shapes valleys, fills seas, and nourishes every living cell. Earth already carried this promise in its sky. It simply needed to cool enough to let the first drops fall. So picture it, a planet glowing like an ember in the dark, its face veiled in thick steam. The ground trembles with eruptions, the air is heavy with gas, and the promise of oceans hangs overhead, waiting for the right moment. It was a pause before transformation, a long inhale before the release of rain. The Earth was still young, still fiery, still wild, but patience was already at work. In time, the heat would soften, the skies would open, and the first true oceans would flow. At last, after ages of fire and steam, Earth began to cool. Slowly, the surface hardened, the lava seas crusted over, and the air grew just a little calmer. And then, something remarkable happened. The skies finally opened. For the very first time, rain fell upon the Earth. Not the gentle rain we know today, but torrents that lasted for centuries, perhaps millennia. Sheets of water poured from the sky, hissing as they struck the still warm ground. Rivers rushed into craters, filling basins, smoothing jagged rocks. The entire planet echoed with the sound of rain, a song that had never been sung before, drop by drop, storm by storm. Earth transformed. The steam that had cloaked the world condensed into liquid, collecting into vast, shimmering bodies of water. Oceans spread outward, swallowing valleys and plains, until most of the planet's surface was covered. Earth had become a water world, a globe of deep blue drifting in space. From above, it must have been breathtaking. Imagine standing in orbit, watching this newborn planet turn beneath you. Endless oceans glistening in the faint light of a young sun, clouds swirling lazily overhead, and the moon circling as a silent guardian. It was the first time Earth looked anything like the home we know now. Water is more than just scenery, it is the great enabler of life. Within its depths, molecules can move, combine, and create. In its waves, energy can stir the ingredients of chemistry into something more. Oceans are cradles, and the Earth had finally made its own. So when you hear the rain outside your window, remember, you are listening to an ancient echo, the same rhythm that first baptized our planet. Billions of years ago, that endless rain fell, and when it stopped, the oceans remained vast, mysterious, and waiting for something extraordinary. The stage was set. Earth was no longer just rock and fire. It was water, and water, as we will see, was the beginning of life itself. Beneath the waves of those first oceans, something subtle began to stir. The planet, once only stone and fire, was now bathed in water, a gentle medium where chemistry could dance. Within those ancient seas, simple molecules drifted, collided, and joined. And slowly, quietly, something new emerged. Around 3.7 billion years ago, the first living organisms appeared. They were not plants or animals, not creatures with eyes or limbs, but microscopic cells, tiny, fragile sparks of life, invisible to the naked eye, yet profound in their existence. With them, the Earth was no longer just a planet. It had become a world alive. It is humbling to imagine these first beings. Perhaps they floated in shallow pools, warmed by sunlight, or near volcanic vents deep in the sea, where minerals poured into the water like nutrients. They did not think or dream, yet they carried within them the very potential for all future life. Forests, oceans of fish, birds in the sky, even us. For nearly 1 billion years, these tiny organisms ruled the Earth alone. They spread across the seas, adapting, multiplying, experimenting with new ways of surviving. They left almost no trace for the eye to see. Yet in the silence of those ancient waters, they were reshaping the destiny of the planet. Close your eyes and imagine that ocean, still, quiet, illuminated only by a young sun and the silver glow of the moon. Beneath the surface, invisible sparks of life drifted, like whispers in the deep. No footsteps, no birdsong, no voices, just water, sky, and the soft beginning of biology. This was life's first spark, fragile yet enduring, a tiny flicker that would grow into forests, civilizations, and stories like the one you are listening to now. For millions of years, Earth was almost entirely a water world. Vast oceans stretched endlessly in every direction, their waves rolling under skies of drifting clouds. Life was hidden beneath the surface, microscopic and quiet, while above the water, the world appeared still and empty. But slowly, deep beneath the seas, the planet was restless. Molten rock churned and shifted, pushing upward through weaknesses in Earth's crust. Over time, these hidden forces raised solid masses above the waves. Small at first, just scattered rocky islands breaking through the water's surface. But these were the beginnings of something new, the first continents. Scientists call them cratons, ancient cores of land that became the seeds of larger continents to come. Imagine dark, jagged stone rising from the ocean, steam swirling as waves crashed against its hot, newly born surface. The air smelled of minerals and rain. The sea hissed as it met warm rock, and for the first time, Earth was no longer only blue. It was beginning to show its first shades of brown and grey. Though barren and lifeless, these early lands marked a turning point. They offered new surfaces for wind to shape, for rain to carve into rivers and valleys. They would one day become homes to mountains, forests, and creatures that walked on land. But in this distant past, they were stark and empty, waiting silently under the Sunday. Picture it from far above, a vast oceanic world, dotted here and there with lonely pieces of land, islands of stone surrounded by endless water, like stepping stones scattered across a deep blue sea. They were small, but they were the beginning of something immense, the foundation of Earth's continents, the landforms that would guide the course of life. The Earth was no longer just a water planet. It was learning to balance sea and land, a slow unveiling of the landscapes we now take for granted. As the first rocky cratons rose from the oceans, they drifted slowly across Earth's surface, carried by the restless currents deep within the planet. At first, they were scattered lonely fragments of land surrounded by an endless sea. But over millions of years, they began to merge, pulled together like pieces of a puzzle. The result was something new in Earth's story, the first supercontinent. Scientists call it Valbara. Compared to the continents we know today, it was small, perhaps smaller than modern Australia. Yet in the context of a world that had been almost entirely ocean, Valbara was enormous. For the first time, Earth wore a true continent upon its surface. Imagine it, a single stretch of rocky land surrounded by vast and silent waters. The skies above were hazy, the air rich in gases we could not breathe, and the land itself was barren. No trees, no grass, not even moss softened the stone. Only wind swept across its surface, carrying the salty breath of the ocean. And yet, in this emptiness, something profound was happening. Valbara was not just land, it was a foundation. The tides crashed against its shores, breaking down rock into sand and clay. Rain pooled into shallow basins, creating places where water could linger and mingle with minerals. These environments became laboratories of chemistry, helping to nurture the simple, microscopic life that already floated in the seas. From above, Earth must have looked strange then. A blue world, vast and shimmering, with a single scar of land stretching across it. But this was the beginning of a pattern that would repeat again and again. Land masses breaking apart, drifting, and then merging to form supercontinents. Valbara was the first chapter in this long geological dance. It may not have been green, it may not have been alive with animals, but it was a promise, a quiet stage, waiting for the actors of life to someday arrive. For nearly 1 billion years, life on Earth remained small and hidden. Tiny cells floated in the oceans, quietly feeding and multiplying, leaving little trace of their presence. But then, a transformation began, one so subtle at first, and yet so powerful, it would forever reshape the destiny of our planet. Some of these microorganisms developed a new way to survive. Instead of relying only on the nutrients around them, they learned to capture sunlight. Through the elegant process of photosynthesis, they used light to create energy, and as a byproduct, they released something new into the atmosphere: oxygen. These humble organisms, known as cyanobacteria, were the planet's first breath givers. Imagine countless tiny cells drifting in the seas, basking in the light of a young sun, exhaling oxygen into the water and air. To us, this invisible act feels ordinary. We breathe oxygen with every passing moment. But back then, it was revolutionary. Slowly, oxygen began to accumulate. At first, it reacted with iron in the oceans, staining the seafloor with rusty layers that still remain as ancient rocks today. But as the supply grew, oxygen began to fill the atmosphere itself. For the first time, Earth's skies were changing, shifting toward the blue world we now recognize. It was not just a chemical shift, it was the beginning of possibility. Oxygen would become the foundation for future life forms, fueling larger, more complex bodies. Without this invisible gift, there would be no forests, no animals, no humans breathing under the stars. Close your eyes and imagine it, a quiet ocean, glowing faintly in sunlight, with trillions of microscopic beings drifting like tiny lanterns. Each one, fragile and small, contributing to a great transformation. Their exhalations filled the world with a breath that endures to this day. The cyanobacteria could never have known, but their quiet work laid the foundation for every heartbeat, every breath, every song. In their stillness, the Earth took its first true breath of air. The gift of oxygen transformed Earth's skies, but with it came an unexpected consequence. As cyanobacteria filled the air with their invisible breath, the balance of the atmosphere shifted. Carbon dioxide levels fell, and with less of this warming gas to trap heat, the planet grew colder than ever before. What followed was Earth's first great ice age. Vast sheets of ice spread outward from the poles, crawling slowly across the land. Oceans froze near their surfaces, locking away the waves in crystal silence. From space, Earth must have looked like a shimmering marble, white and blue, glowing faintly under the light of a young Sunday. Imagine standing on the edge of this ancient world. The air is sharp and thin, the land beneath your feet frozen solid. Where once there had been dark oceans stretching to the horizon, now there is only a glittering expanse of ice. Even the equator, which today basks in warmth, was touched by snow. Life endured, but it endured in hiding. Microbes sheltered in cracks within the ice, near volcanic vents at the ocean floor, or in small pockets of liquid water that resisted the deep freeze. They were fragile but resilient, holding on through an age when the world seemed nearly uninhabitable. This was Earth as a frozen planet, a slumbering giant wrapped in ice. And yet, beneath the stillness, the planet was not lifeless. Volcanoes still rumbled beneath the crust, releasing heat and gases into the air. Slowly, over millions of years, the buildup of greenhouse gases warmed the Earth again, melting the ice and returning liquid oceans to the surface. When the thaw came, it must have been extraordinary. Glaciers breaking, rivers rushing, waves rising again under the Sunday. The world had been tested, and it had survived. So, even in its deepest freeze, Earth was writing a lesson into its story, that life can endure even through silence and ice, waiting patiently for the warmth to return. As the planet thawed and the oceans breathed again, Earth's surface was far from still. Deep beneath the crust, molten rock continued to churn, pushing the continents like rafts adrift on a fiery sea. Over millions of years, these drifting slabs of land wandered, collided, and fused together. From their slow and restless journey, a new supercontinent was born, Rodinia. Rodinia may have been the largest supercontinent ever to exist. Imagine a single vast landmass stretching across much of the globe, its rocky body surrounded by endless ocean. From above, Earth looked divided into two great realms, the deep blue seas and the sprawling brown continent that dominated its face. On its surface, Rodinia was barren. No forests, no grasslands, only bare stone and mountains rising beneath a sky still thick with gases unfit for us to breathe. Yet the joining of continents shaped more than the land. It changed the climate, the tides, and even the chemistry of the seas. Shorelines extended for thousands of miles, where waves could stir minerals into the water and create new niches for life. Though invisible to the eye, simple life was quietly adapting to these changes. Microorganisms multiplied along the coasts, taking advantage of the shifting environment. With the atmosphere now rich in oxygen, new pathways of survival were opening. Slowly, the blueprint for more complex life was being drawn. Picture Rodinia as a sleeping giant, lying across the planet's surface. Around it, the ocean whispers, washing against its shores. Above it, clouds drift across a pale sky. It may look empty to us now, but in its stillness, it was preparing the stage for the next great blossoming of life. The continents were no longer static. They would break apart, drift, and reassemble again and again, shaping the rhythm of Earth's history. Rodinia was one verse in this long song of stone, a verse that set the stage for life to grow more daring, more complex, and more beautiful than ever before. For billions of years, Earth's oceans had been home only to the simplest of organisms, tiny, single-celled beings that floated, multiplied, and endured. But after Rodinia's rise, with oxygen thickening the air and minerals stirring in the seas, life began to take on new forms. Something subtle yet monumental was happening. Life was learning complexity. The first multicellular organisms emerged. At first, they were little more than clusters of cells, clinging together, cooperating instead of drifting alone. But in that cooperation lay possibility. Cells began to specialize, some focusing on movement, others on feeding, others on sensing the environment. Together, they formed bodies greater than the sum of their parts. Imagine the oceans then. If you could dive into their depths, you wouldn't see fish or coral reefs. Instead, you'd find strange, soft-bodied creatures, ribbons of jelly-like forms drifting in the currents, mats of microbial colonies carpeting the seafloor, and delicate structures branching like underwater lace. They were not yet animals as we know them, but they were the first hints of the diversity to come. It was a time of quiet innovation. The blueprint of life was being tested, reshaped, and refined. Photosynthetic organisms continued to fill the atmosphere with oxygen, while new forms experimented with shape, size, and survival. Evolution moved slowly, but its direction was clear, toward organisms more intricate, more capable, more alive in ways we would someday recognize. From space, Earth looked unchanged, a blue ocean world with a vast continent stretched across its surface. But beneath the waves, invisible to the stars, the first great leap toward complexity was unfolding. It is humbling to think that all of us, trees, whales, birds, and humans, trace our origins back to this moment, when cells first learned to work together. In the silence of those ancient seas, the foundations of forests, lungs, and mines were being laid. The planet was preparing for something extraordinary. Soon, life would not only grow more complex, it would begin to flourish in a burst of creativity, unlike anything the world had ever seen. No continent lasts forever. Just as the tides shift and mountains crumble, the supercontinents of Earth follow their own rhythm of birth and dissolution. Rodinia, vast and ancient, seemed unshakable. But deep below its rocky skin, Earth's molten heart never rested. Pressure built, cracks widened. Slowly, silently, Rodinia began to break apart. Imagine this colossal landmass tearing at its seams. Valleys split open, seas poured into rifts, and new coastlines stretched across the planet. What had once been a single unified body, fragmented into drifting pieces, pulled apart by the invisible currents of plate tectonics. As Rodinia shattered, oceans expanded, the coastlines multiplied, creating more shallow waters bathed in sunlight. And it was in these shallows that life found fresh opportunities. Nutrients washed from the land into the sea, feeding microbial mats and encouraging the growth of early multicellular organisms. Each split of the continent created new ecological stages, new environments for life to experiment upon. From the fragments of Rodinia, a new assembly formed a smaller supercontinent, scientists called Theia. Unlike Rodinia, it was short-lived, a fleeting arrangement of drifting land masses. Yet even in its brevity, it played a role in shaping the Earth's surface and the future of life. Picture the Earth then, from far above, not one giant landmass, but several vast pieces, scattered and regrouping, moving like puzzle fragments on a restless table. Around them, the oceans glittered, alive with simple but evolving creatures. Rodinia's breaking was not an end, but a transition, a reminder that change is constant, even on a planetary scale. Land drifts, oceans shift, and in their movement, life is given new places to grow. And soon, this ever-changing Earth was about to witness one of its most dramatic chapters, the sudden and astonishing blossoming of life, known as the Cambrian explosion. After billions of years of quiet preparation, Earth was ready for a transformation. Around 540 million years ago, life took a daring leap forward in what scientists call the Cambrian explosion. In a relatively short span of time, the oceans filled with forms so new, so diverse, that it was as if the planet had suddenly discovered imagination. Creatures with hard shells and spines appeared, their bodies leaving fossils far more durable than their soft-bodied ancestors. Eyes developed, granting the gift of sight. Mouths and jaws evolved, introducing the first true hunters into the seas. For the first time, life was not just surviving, it was competing, moving, sensing, and thriving in dazzling variety. The oceans must have looked like a dreamscape. Trilobites, with their segmented armor, scuttled along the seafloor like alien insect. Worm-like creatures burrowed into sediments, creating tunnels and patterns in the mud. Some beings sprouted delicate spines, others grew shells shaped like cones or crescents, and some were unlike anything we would recognize today. Strange, almost fantastical shapes, as though sculpted by imagination itself. From the surface, the planet looked unchanged. Blue oceans, drifting continents, clouds passing quietly across the sky. But beneath the waves, a revolution was unfolding. Life was multiplying in complexity, filling ecological roles that had never before existed. Predator and prey, swimmer and crawler, burrower and floater all had emerged in a sudden burst of creativity. It was not only biology that changed, it was also the pace of evolution itself. For billions of years, life had crept forward slowly, cautiously, but in the Cambrian, it sprinted. The blueprint of bodies, spines, shells, eyes, legs was written, a template that would echo through every age to come. Close your eyes and imagine drifting through those oceans, a silent diver in waters, teeming with alien creatures, their forms gleaming under the filtered sunlight. The Cambrian seas were not calm. They were alive with movement, with possibility, with the restless energy of creation. The world had blossomed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Life's great bloom during the Cambrian explosion filled the oceans with extraordinary diversity. But nature's generosity often walks hand in hand with fragility. Around 440 million years ago, the planet shifted once again, its climate changing dramatically, its oceans cooling, and with that change came Earth's first mass extinction. The event is known as the Ordovician-Silurian extinction. Temperatures fell, glaciers spread, and sea levels dropped. Shallow waters, which had been vibrant cradles of life, shrank or vanished entirely. Countless species creatures that had only just emerged in the Cambrian suddenly found themselves without a home. Nearly 85% of marine life disappeared. Imagine it, oceans that had teemed with trilobites, brachiopods, and coral-like organisms now fell quiet. The seafloor, once bustling with activity, grew barren. Entire lineages of life vanished forever, leaving only faint impressions in stone. From above, Earth must have looked serene, wrapped in ice and calm seas, but beneath the waves, silence replaced abundance. And yet, extinction, as harsh as it seems, is part of the rhythm of life. It clears space, reshapes ecosystems, and forces survivors to adapt. After the Ordovician extinction, new species slowly emerged, better suited to the altered world. Evolution took another step forward, guided not only by abundance but by loss. It is a reminder that Earth's story is not a straight line of progress, but a cycle of flourishing and fading, of birth and departure. Every mass extinction feels like an ending, yet each has paved the way for something new. So while the Ordovician seas grew empty, they were not dead. In their quiet, they carried the seeds of the next chapter, a new surge of life that would rise once the Earth warmed again. When the long silence of extinction began to ease, Earth quietly prepared for another transformation, one that would forever reshape its surface. Life, which had so far been confined mostly to the oceans, was about to reach upward, toward the air and the light. Around 420 million years ago, the first true plants began to appear along the shorelines. At first, they were small, simple, clinging to damp ground. But over time, they grew taller, sturdier, more ambitious. Roots stretched into the soil, anchoring them against the wind. Stems reached skyward, seeking sunlight. Leaves unfurled to capture energy from above. And then, in a monumental leap, the first trees rose. Imagine standing on the edge of this ancient world, where once there had been only bare rock and shallow waters. Now groves of primitive trees spread across the land. Their trunks were strange by today's standards. Thicker, rougher, without the softness of flowers or fruit. But to the earth, they were a revolution. For the first time, the land wore a cloak of green. These trees were more than scenery. They altered the very atmosphere. Through photosynthesis, they released vast amounts of oxygen, enriching the skies even further. Their roots broke down stone, creating fertile soil. Their fallen leaves and branches decayed, recycling nutrients and building ecosystems where none had existed before. Forests gave shelter to new forms of life. Insects crept among the roots and trunks. Amphibious creatures crawled out of the water to rest in the shade. The land, once barren, now invited life to stay. Picture Earth then, rivers winding through valleys shaded by trees, breezes carrying the scent of leaves, and the soft sound of water and wind mingling. It was not yet the lush green planet we know, but it was the beginning. With trees and roots, Earth's surface was transformed. The land had come alive, and life was no longer bound only to the sea. The stage was set for the first true colonization of the continents. With the rise of forests, the barren land had begun to soften. Shade fell across the soil, rivers carried nutrients, and the air itself was richer in oxygen. For the first time, Earth's surface was not just rock and wind, it was an invitation. And some creatures accepted it. Around 400 million years ago, animals began to crawl from the oceans onto land. At first, they were cautious pioneers, arthropods like millipedes and scorpions, creeping slowly through the undergrowth of primitive plants. Amphibians soon followed, descendants of fish that had grown strong fins, able to push themselves through shallow waters and onto muddy shores. With each step, they tasted a new world. Imagine these creatures, their bodies glistening in the sunlight, unaccustomed to dry air, yet curious enough to linger. They found refuge among roots and ferns, resting in the cool shade of the first trees. The land was silent compared to the bustling seas, but in that silence, opportunity waited. The challenges were immense. Breathing air instead of water, supporting weight without buoyancy, protecting soft skin from drying winds, every step onto land was a struggle. Yet nature is persistent. With time, lungs grew stronger, limbs became more capable, and skin adapted to hold in moisture. Each adaptation opened doors for the next generation, leading them farther from the ocean's edge. Soon, entire ecosystems formed on land. Insects pollinated plants, amphibians hunted in rivers and forests. Early reptiles began to appear, creatures that could travel farther inland, no longer bound to water for survival. Earth's continents, once silent stone, now rustled with movement. Close your eyes and picture it. A primeval forest under a hazy sky, the air thick with the smell of damp soil. Between the roots, insects scurry. By the river's edge, a strange amphibian takes a careful step, leaving the imprint of its toes in soft mud. It is the beginning of footprints on land, the first marks of animals that dared to explore beyond the sea. The oceans had given birth to life, but now the land was claiming its share. A new chapter had begun, and with it, Earth's story grew richer and more complex. As forests spread and animals began to explore the land, Earth itself was changing beneath their feet. The continents, carried by slow but relentless currents, deep in the mantle, drifted across the globe. Over millions of years, they moved closer together, colliding and merging, and eventually, they became one. This was Pangaea, the last and greatest of Earth's supercontinents. Imagine a single landmass so vast it stretched from pole to pole, a continent that gathered nearly all of Earth's land into one colossal body. Surrounding it was Panthalassa, an ocean that spanned half the planet, waves rolling endlessly without barriers. From above, Earth looked simple, one immense continent, one immense ocean. Yet on its surface, the world was alive with change. Inside Pangaea, deserts spread across the arid interior, where rain seldom reached. Along its coasts, forests thrived, rivers wound their way to the sea, and animals filled the land with movement and sound. The rise of Pangaea reshaped life in countless ways. Animals could now travel vast distances over continuous land, spreading into new environments. Plants colonized new soils, and ecosystems grew more diverse. But it also meant less shoreline and fewer shallow seas, which had once been rich nurseries of marine life. With this rearrangement of Earth's geography came both opportunity and challenge. Picture the world in this age, an endless horizon of land, mountains rising where continents had collided, rivers carving valleys across new terrain. In the sky, giant insects buzzed on strong wings. In the forests, reptiles prowled, their bodies adapted to dry ground. Life had found its way into nearly every corner of Pangaea. Yet even as the supercontinent flourished, its vastness carried a sense of impermanence. Like those before it, Pangaea, too, would not last. In time, cracks would form, oceans would push their way inland, and the continent would split apart once more. But for now, in this moment, Earth was united under a single land. The stage was set for both triumph and tragedy, the rise of extraordinary creatures, and one of the greatest extinctions the world would ever know. Pangaea stood vast and mighty, a continent stretching across the globe. Life filled its rivers, forests, and coasts. Insects buzzed, amphibians crept, and reptiles grew larger with each generation. It seemed as though the Earth was thriving, but deep beneath the surface, forces were gathering that would bring about the most devastating extinction the planet has ever faced. Around 250 million years ago, volcanic eruptions of unimaginable scale tore through the land. Entire regions split open, spilling lava across thousands of miles. Ash and gases flooded the skies. Carbon dioxide and methane poured into the atmosphere, wrapping the Earth in a suffocating blanket. The air grew hotter, the seas more acidic, and ecosystems began to collapse. This event is known as the Great Dying. Nearly 90% of species vanished. Oceans that had been alive with corals, trilobites, and fish fell silent. Forests withered, leaving behind barren stretches of land. Even insects, usually so resilient, suffered massive losses. Life itself seemed to falter, as if the Earth was pausing between breaths. Imagine walking through that world. Rivers reduced to sluggish streams under a burning sky. Forests blackened by ash. The air heavy, difficult to breathe. Oceans stripped of oxygen, their waters suffocating the creatures within. It was an apocalypse written not in fire alone, but in silence, life extinguished on a scale never seen before. And yet, as always, Earth endured. A few survivors clung to existence, small reptiles, stubborn plants, resilient microbes in the seas. From these remnants, new ecosystems would slowly emerge. The loss was immeasurable, but it opened space for new life to rise, shaping the future in unexpected ways. The Great Dying was not the end of Earth's story. It was a painful chapter, one that tested the resilience of life itself. And from its ashes, a new era was about to begin, an age ruled by some of the most extraordinary creatures the world has ever known. From the ashes of the Great Dying, life found its way back, slowly at first, with small creatures and fragile plants reclaiming the land. But as millions of years passed, survivors adapted, evolved, and grew bolder. Out of this long recovery, a new caste of giants emerged, creatures that would rule the Earth for more than 150 million years. This was the age of the dinosaurs. Imagine the world around 230 million years ago. The climate was warm, the forests were spreading again, and reptiles began to grow larger than ever before. Some stood on two legs, quick and agile hunters. Others lumbered on four, massive bodies supported by tree trunk legs. Soon, Earth's landscapes echoed with the steps of the dinosaurs, creatures of every size and shape, filling the land with movement and sound. Among them were the sauropods, gentle giants with necks that reached the treetops. The largest of all, Argentinosaurus, stretched longer than a blue whale and weighed more than dozens of elephants combined. Imagine standing in its shadow, the ground trembling beneath each step, its head rising like a tower above the forest. But not all were gentle. Apex predators like the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex appeared millions of years later, their jaws powerful enough to crush bone. Sleek hunters, swift and cunning, stalked herds across plains and forests. Earth had never seen such dominance. An empire of reptiles thriving in every environment from deserts to swamps. During this time, Pangaea itself began to break apart. Cracks opened in the land, and slowly, continents drifted toward the shapes we recognize today. As the land split, dinosaurs spread across the globe, adapting to deserts, wetlands, and forests, diversifying into thousands of unique species. Picture Earth then. Lush forests under a hazy sky, giant reptiles moving like living mountains, flocks of pterosaurs gliding across oceans, and the first birds beginning to take wing. The air was alive with calls, roars, and the rustling of enormous bodies in the undergrowth. For millions upon millions of years, the dinosaurs reigned supreme. Their age was long and magnificent, a chapter of life's story written in giant footsteps. But even the mightiest of rulers cannot hold their crown forever. Beyond the horizon, change was already approaching, swift, fiery, and unstoppable. While dinosaurs thrived and filled the land with their thunderous presence, the earth beneath them was quietly shifting. Pangaea, the great supercontinent that had once united nearly all of Earth's land, was beginning to fracture. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it cracked along deep seams. Over millions of years, it split into smaller pieces, carried by the restless currents of molten rock below. From these drifting fragments, the continents we know today began to take shape. North and South America pulled away from Africa and Europe. India, like a solitary raft, began its long journey northward. Australia drifted toward the far south. Oceans widened, new coastlines appeared, and the face of the earth transformed. Imagine watching from above as the slow dance of continents unfolded. What seems fixed to us today, mountains, valleys, coastlines, was in truth moving all along. A mountain range could rise, crumble, and vanish, while oceans opened and closed like breathing lungs. Earth's surface was never still. For life, these shifts brought both challenge and opportunity. As continents separated, climates changed. Deserts formed where seas once had been. Rainforests grew in places that were once dry. Species that had lived side by side were separated by vast oceans, evolving along different paths. Dinosaurs, adaptable and enduring, spread across these new lands, diversifying into countless forms. Some grazed in lush valleys, others stalked prey across open plains, while still others took to the skies as feathered creatures, the first birds. Picture Earth in this age, the continents drifting apart like puzzle pieces, oceans growing wider, and strange new coastlines alive with the calls of dinosaurs. It was a world in motion, carrying its inhabitants along without their knowing. The breaking of Pangaea was more than geology, it was the beginning of the modern world's geography, the outlines we see on maps today. But even as the continents drifted, a shadow loomed on the horizon. For the age of dinosaurs, glorious and long-lived, was destined to end in a single fiery moment. For more than 150 million years, dinosaurs ruled the earth. They thundered across forests, deserts, and swamps, adapting to every corner of the world. From the tiniest bird-like hunters to the towering sauropods, they seemed unstoppable, eternal. But even the greatest reigns end, and for the dinosaurs, their final chapter arrived suddenly carved into history by fire from the sky. Around 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid hurtled toward Earth. Roughly 10 kilometers wide, it traveled faster than sound itself, carrying enough energy to reshape the planet in an instant. When it struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, the impact unleashed devastation beyond imagining. In that moment, mountains vaporized, oceans boiled, and shockwaves circled the globe. Debris flung into the atmosphere, forming a choking veil that blotted out the sunday. For months, perhaps years, Earth was plunged into a twilight. Plants withered without sunlight. Food chains collapsed. And one by one, the mighty dinosaurs, except for a few small bird-like survivors, disappeared. Imagine standing far away, on a quiet shoreline, as the sky darkens not with night, but with ash. The air grows cold. The forest falls silent. Even the roar of the dinosaurs fades. A chapter that had lasted for millions of years closed almost in an instant, leaving behind only silence and the soft hiss of wind over a wounded earth. Yet, as with every extinction, life did not end completely. Mammals, small and overlooked during the dinosaurs' reign, endured. They crept from hiding places, scavenging, adapting, and slowly spreading into the empty niches left behind. The fall of the dinosaurs was not just an ending, it was also a beginning. From the fire of that single impact, the stage was cleared for a new kind of creature to rise. Creatures with fur instead of scales, with warm blood instead of cold. Creatures that would one day give birth to us. When the dust of the great asteroid finally began to settle, the Earth was a changed world. The mighty dinosaurs were gone. Their long reign ended in silence. In their absence, new possibilities opened spaces in the forests, on the plains, and in the skies. Into these empty niches stepped the survivors, the mammals. For millions of years, mammals had lived in the shadows of giants. Small, furry, and mostly nocturnal, they scurried in the underbrush, hunted insects, and raised their young in burrows and hollows. But now, with the dinosaurs gone, they were free to expand, to grow, to explore in ways they never could before. Imagine early mammals spreading across the land, some remaining small and nimble, others growing larger, experimenting with new forms. Hoofed creatures began to graze in open fields. Carnivorous mammals stalked them in turn. Some took to the trees, developing grasping hands and keen eyes. Others ventured into rivers and seas, evolving into the ancestors of whales and dolphins. The world itself was changing too. Forests thickened, flowers blossomed, and insects multiplied, weaving a more vibrant web of life. Birds, the last descendants of the dinosaurs, soared through the skies, while mammals filled the land below with new energy. Evolution was accelerating, and diversity flourished. Picture the Earth then, green valleys alive with herds, predators slipping through the grass, birds wheeling overhead. It was no longer a world dominated by reptiles, but by warm-blooded creatures who nurtured their young with care. Life pulsed with a new rhythm, quieter perhaps than the thunder of dinosaurs, but just as enduring. Among these mammals, some would grow cleverer, their brains larger, their social bonds stronger. They would learn to use tools, to communicate, to shape their environment. From them, one day, humans would emerge. The fall of the dinosaurs had cleared the stage, and the age of mammals had begun. A gentler age in some ways, but no less full of wonder, no less destined to change the course of Earth's story forever. From the flourishing age of mammals, countless branches of life spread across the Earth. Herds thundered across grasslands, predators stalked silently in forests, and tiny creatures darted through rivers and trees. Among them, one lineage began a journey unlike any other, a path that would one day lead to us. Around 6 million years ago, in the heart of Africa, the earliest ancestors of humans appeared. They were not yet human as we know ourselves, but they were something new, Sahelanthropus. These beings still moved on all fours much of the time, but their anatomy suggests they could also walk upright. With that small shift, a door opened a way of moving, of seeing, of being that no other creature had taken before. Imagine them in their ancient landscape. Grasslands stretched under wide skies, scattered with trees that offered fruit and shelter. Rivers wound through the earth, shimmering in the sunlight. Sahelanthropus moved cautiously between the forests and the open plains, their bodies caught between two worlds, part ape, part something more. They did not yet have language, tools, or fire, but in their upright stance lay the seed of all that would follow. Standing freed their hands, allowing them to gather food, carry young, and eventually shape objects. Their eyes rose above the tall grass, scanning the horizon for danger. Bit by bit, these early steps laid the foundation for the humans yet to come. It is humbling to imagine them not as strangers, but as the distant beginning of our own story. We carry their legacy in our bones, in the way we walk, in the way we hold the world in our hands. The earth had given rise to countless creatures, but in Sahelanthropus, a spark had ignited. A lineage was beginning its long, winding journey toward thought, memory, and imagination. Toward the ability to tell stories of the past and to dream of the future. As time passed, the descendants of Sahelanthropus continued to evolve, step by step, generation by generation. Around 4 million years ago, something remarkable became permanent. Our ancestors truly stood upright, no longer half-walking, half-climbing. They had become full-time bipeds, walking confidently on 2 legs across the African landscape. This change may seem simple, but it transformed everything. To walk upright freed the hands completely. No longer needed for movement, they could gather food, cradle infants, carry tools, and eventually create. Standing tall also lifted the eyes. Our ancestors could see farther across the grasslands, watching for predators, finding water, or following migrating herds. Imagine those early humans moving across the savannah. The horizon stretched endlessly, painted with tall, golden grasses that rippled in the wind. Acacia trees dotted the land, their branches spreading wide like open arms. In the distance, rivers shimmered, and herds of antelope moved like waves across the plain. Amid this vibrant world, upright figures strode steadily, their hands free, their gaze alert. Walking upright also reshaped the body. The spine curved to balance, the pelvis narrowed, and feet adapted to carry weight across long distances. These physical changes allowed our ancestors to travel farther, explore wider, and survive in shifting climates. They were no longer bound to the forests, they could thrive in open lands, moving with the rhythm of the earth. This step was not only physical, it was symbolic. By standing, our ancestors claimed a new perspective, both literally and figuratively. It was as if they were beginning to rise into a future no other creature could imagine. Every stride they took across those ancient plains carried them closer to us, and though they could not have known it, their upright journey was the first true path toward language, culture, and story, the essence of what it means to be human. Once our ancestors had learned to walk upright, their hands were free, empty, but full of potential. Around 3 million years ago, those hands began to shape the world in a way no other creature had done before. They picked up stones, not just to throw or carry, but to transform. With careful strikes, they chipped rocks into sharp edges. These were the first tools. A broken stone may seem humble to us now, lying silent and ordinary on the ground. But in those days, it was revolutionary. A sharp flake could cut through meat, split open bones for their marrow, or slice plants more efficiently. Suddenly, survival was no longer limited to teeth and claws. With tools, our ancestors could unlock new sources of food, defend themselves, and alter their environment. Imagine an early human crouched by a riverbank, holding a round stone in one hand and striking it with another. Chips scatter, the sound of cracking echoes, and then a blade is born. It is crude, rough, but it is purposeful. In that moment, the first sparks of invention flicker. With tools came change in behavior. Food could be processed and shared more easily, encouraging cooperation. Knowledge of tool-making was passed from one generation to the next, not just through instinct, but through teaching and observation. It was the beginning of culture ideas, carried forward like fire from one life to another. Over time, tools became more sophisticated. Stones were shaped into axes, scrapers, and spear tips. With each new design, humans grew more capable, more creative. Their relationship with the world deepened. Nature was no longer just something they endured, but something they could shape. Close your eyes and picture it. A small group of early humans gathered around, some crafting tools, others watching, children learning by imitation. The crack of stone against stone becomes a rhythm, a song of survival and ingenuity. It was the dawn of technology, not the kind of machines we know today, but the first step on a path that would lead all the way to rockets and satellites. With tools, humans crossed a threshold. They were no longer only creatures of nature, they had become creators within it, and this gift of creation would only grow stronger with time. For millions of years, early humans shaped stone into tools, but their lives were still bound by the rhythms of the natural world. Daylight for activity, nightfall for rest, raw food for sustenance, and cold winds endured in silence. Then, around 800,000 years ago, they made a discovery that would forever change their relationship with the earth. They learned to control fire. At first, fire must have been a mystery, a thing glimpsed in lightning strikes or volcanic eruptions. It was wild, dangerous, untouchable. But over time, our ancestors learned not just to fear it, but to keep it, to nurture it, to use it as an ally. From sparks and embers, flames grew, and with them came light, warmth, and protection. Imagine the first campfires flickering in the darkness. Families gathered around glowing embers, their faces illuminated in orange light. The shadows of their bodies danced on cave walls as the fire crackled and popped. Beyond the circle of light, the night was vast and full of predators. But within it, there was safety, a fragile sphere of warmth in the cold. Fire gave more than comfort. It allowed food to be cooked, making it easier to digest, unlocking new energy for growing brains. It extended the day, giving humans time to gather, to share, to imagine together under the stars. Around the fire, bonds deepened, stories were born, and community grew stronger. The mastery of fire was also symbolic. It was the first time humans truly bent nature to their will, not by shaping stone, but by commanding one of the primal forces of the universe. From that moment on, humans were no longer simply surviving in the world. They were shaping their own environment, carrying warmth into cold nights and light into darkness. Close your eyes and hear it. The quiet hiss of burning wood, the gentle crackle of flames, the sigh of wind through trees outside the fire's glow. This was the heartbeat of early humanity, the rhythm that carried us from mere survival into something more. With fire, we discovered not only warmth and safety, but also wonder. It was light against the void, a small piece of the stars brought down to earth. And from this gift, humanity's journey toward imagination, creativity, and story had truly begun. As firelight flickered across ancient faces, something profound was happening inside the human mind. Over thousands of generations, brains grew larger and more complex. Neurons tangled into vast networks, opening doors to memory, imagination, and language. Humanity was not only surviving, it was beginning to think in ways no other creature ever had. Brains alone, however, were not enough. What truly set humans apart was their bond with one another. Around campfires, families huddled close. They shared food, protected children, and comforted each other in the dark. Words still primitive began to emerge, simple sounds that carried meaning. With them came stories, warnings, and songs. Knowledge could now travel not just through instinct, but through memory and teaching. Imagine a small band of early humans sitting beneath the stars. The fire crackles, sparks drift upward into the night, and voices murmur softly. A parent shows a child how to crack a nut with a stone. A hunter describes where water can be found. Perhaps someone tells a story, weaving memory into myth as shadows dance on the cave walls. In these moments, the human mind and the human bond grew inseparable. With stronger minds came new tools, more precise and creative. Spears tipped with stone, needles carved from bone, ornaments shaped for beauty rather than survival. These objects reveal something remarkable. Humans were no longer living only for necessity. They were beginning to live for meaning, for connection, for expression. The brain's growth was fueled by community, and community was strengthened by the brain. One made the other flourish, like two rivers feeding into a single ocean. From this union came empathy, curiosity, and the ability to dream. It is humbling to realize that the stories we tell today, whether whispered to a child before sleep or shared across the vast expanse of the internet, trace their roots back to those first gatherings. Our ancestors, with firelight in their eyes, planted the seeds of culture, of memory, of humanity itself. Brains and bonds together lifted us beyond survival. They gave us the power to imagine a future, to remember the past, and to hold one another through both. For millions of years, humanity was not alone. Our lineage was a braided river, branching into many species, some tall and robust, others small and nimble, all experimenting with survival in different ways. There were Homo habilis, toolmakers with clever hands, Homo erectus, long-distance walkers who spread out of Africa, Neanderthals, strong and resourceful, thriving in the cold of Ice Age Europe, and others whose bones and traces still whisper their names. But time, as always, brings change. Slowly, one by one, these branches withered. By around 40,000 years ago, only a single human species remained, Homo sapiens us. Imagine that moment in prehistory. Across the vast world, other humans had once left footprints in caves, tools by riverbeds, fires smoldering in the night, and now their voices had faded. The last Neanderthals hunted in shrinking valleys. The Denisovans vanished into the mists of Asia. Others disappeared so quietly that no memory of them was left. Only bones, hidden in stone. And yet, traces of them live within us. Their DNA lingers in our blood, woven into the fabric of our genes. We are not a single story, but many stories carried forward in one body. Every human alive today holds within them echoes of other humans who no longer walk the earth. Picture the earth then, bands of Homo sapiens moving across continents, painting caves with ochre and charcoal, leaving handprints on stone walls as if to say, "We are here." They carried with them fire, tools, and the beginnings of language, stepping into a future that belonged only to them. The survival of Homo sapiens was not guaranteed, yet it happened. And with that, we became the last humans, the sole caretakers of a lineage that had once been shared. It is a gift, but also a responsibility. For in us live not just our own dreams, but the dreams of those who walked before us, whose songs have faded, but whose legacy continues in our breath. For most of their history, humans lived as wanderers. They followed herds across grasslands, gathered fruits and roots from forests, and moved with the seasons. Life was uncertain, but it was also free, guided by the rhythms of the earth. Then, about 10,000 years ago, something shifted. Instead of moving with the land, humans began to shape it. They became farmers. It began quietly, in fertile valleys where rivers flooded and left behind rich soil. Seeds were scattered, whether by accident or design, and people noticed that plants could return, grow stronger, and provide more food than chance alone would allow. Animals, too, were tamed goats, sheep, cattle once wild, now living alongside humans, offering milk, wool, and strength. Imagine the transformation. Villages rose where camps once stood. Families built huts from mud and reeds. Fires burned not just for warmth, but for cooking harvests. And fields of grain swayed in the wind under open skies. The smell of bread, the rhythm of planting, the hum of animals, all of it became part of daily life. Farming changed everything. With steady food supplies, populations grew. Instead of wandering, humans settled. And with settlement came new possibilities. Storing grain, crafting pottery, building permanent homes. Communities swelled into towns, and towns into the seeds of civilizations. But farming was more than survival. It was a new relationship with the earth. For the first time, humans were not only adapting to nature, but reshaping it. Rivers were diverted into irrigation canals. Forests were cleared for fields. The land itself was being asked to serve human need, and it responded with abundance. Yet this abundance came with responsibility. Settled life meant new challenges, defending food stores, resolving conflicts, and tending to the cycles of planting and harvest. Humans learned to measure time by the stars, to record seasons, to tell stories of fertility and renewal. Culture blossomed alongside crops. Picture an early farming village at dusk. Smoke rises from cooking fires, fields stretch toward the horizon, and children play near clay pots filled with grain. For the first time, humanity has roots literally and figuratively anchored to the soil that will sustain them. This was the dawn of civilization, born from seeds and patience. From these quiet fields grew the cities, temples, and stories that would carry us into history. For thousands of years after the first seeds were planted, humanity grew alongside its fields. Villages turned into cities, kingdoms rose and fell, and great civilizations carved their stories into stone. For most of that time, life was guided by the rhythm of nature, the turning of the seasons, the rising and setting of the Sunday. But about 250 years ago, a new rhythm emerged, faster, louder, and more relentless. This was the Industrial Revolution. It began with machines, simple at first, powered by water wheels or burning coal. But soon, spinning looms, steam engines, and iron furnaces transformed the way people lived and worked. Where once families wove cloth by hand, factories now produced it in torrents. Where once travel meant days on foot, trains carried passengers across landscapes in hours. Imagine the world in that age of awakening. Cities swelling with smoke and noise, chimneys reaching into grey skies, streets crowded with workers, the air filled with the hiss of steam and the clatter of gears. By day, machines roared. By night, lamps lit the darkness, turning midnight into noon. Humanity had found a new kind of fire this time, not in campfires, but in coal furnaces and engines. The Industrial Revolution did more than change technology. It changed humanity itself. Populations soared. By 1804, the world reached 1 billion people. Barely a century later, it doubled. By 1960, it had doubled again, racing upward in numbers never seen before. With more people came more ideas, more inventions, more ambition. But with growth came complexity. Rural life gave way to urban sprawl. Societies shifted from farming rhythms to factory schedules. The bond between humans and the land began to loosen, replaced by a bond with machines, with progress, with speed. And yet, even in the haze of coal smoke and the clang of iron, there was wonder. Railways stitched continents together. Ships crossed oceans with ease. Telegraph wires carried voices across distance. Humanity had turned a corner, and the world itself seemed smaller, faster, more connected. Picture it. A child standing in a bustling city street in the 19th century, gazing up at towering smokestacks. Behind them lies a history of seeds and soil. Before them, a future of steel, steam, and invention. The Industrial Revolution was not just a chapter in history. It was a leap, one that carried humanity into the modern age. From fire to farming, from stone tools to steel machines, humanity's story has unfolded like a great river always flowing forward, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, always reshaping the land it passes. And now, here we stand, not in some distant age of dinosaurs or ice, but in our own fragile present. Today, more than 8 billion of us walk this planet. We build towers that scrape the sky, machines that circle the Earth, and telescopes that peer into the farthest galaxies. We have learned to split atoms, to map the code of life, to send our voices across the world in an instant. In just a heartbeat of cosmic time, we have become a force as mighty as rivers, volcanoes, and even asteroids. But with this power comes a shadow. Our factories and engines, the very tools that carried us into modern life, have also filled the skies with gases that warm the planet. Ice melts, seas rise, and countless species vanish in silence. Scientists warn that we may be stepping into another mass extinction this time, one of our own making. And yet the story is not finished. Unlike the creatures that came before us, we can see what is happening. We can choose. That is our gift and our burden. The same hands that chipped stone into blades now build solar panels and satellites. The same minds that painted caves with ochre now imagine solutions, dreaming of futures where life can flourish alongside us. Close your eyes and picture Earth as it is today, a fragile blue sphere wrapped in thin clouds, turning slowly in the darkness of space. The continents carry forests, deserts, and cities. The oceans breathe in tides under the moon's pull. It has survived fire, ice, and extinction. And now, its fate rests, at least in part, in our hands. The story of Earth is not only one of survival, it is one of resilience, of beauty born from chaos, of life that endures against all odds. As you drift into rest tonight, remember that you, too, are part of this story. A spark in the long chain of life, carrying forward the dreams of countless generations. And if this journey has soothed you, if it has given you wonder and calm, let it be a reminder that the universe is vast, but home is precious. Subscribe and join again for more gentle stories of science, where curiosity meets quiet and the cosmos becomes a lullaby.